So I will excuse Nirad. I want to capitalize on Professor Cummings' presence here to take questions from the floor for about 5 minutes. So Nirad, I know he regrets having to do this, but we are very happy to have...
I didn't know we could.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much, Nirad. And I hope you make your board meeting in time. He has stayed beyond the time he had pledged to come. So I will now open up the floor to questions for the panelists. There are roaming mics around, so if you hold your hand up, Senator Vera at the front. Can somebody get a mic, please, to Senator Vera? Oops. You can stand, senators. Everyone can see.
Thanks a lot. Excellent presentations. Very enjoyable and very timely. I have 2 questions. First question was kind of answered. It was about the guardrails, but it led to a sort of sub-question, and which is, if we let this technology proceed unchecked, what do you foresee? Where are we going to go with it? So that's my first question. And the second question flows from something when you talked about there are 5 companies that basically control all the data. Now, I know some of those companies have advisory boards, but it's kind of scary when you think that these companies control more power than national governments.
They do.
And so the question is, can we rely on them to do the right thing and to do the fair thing? Or should we, as societies, be looking to rein them in and put in guardrails? So those are my 2 questions. Thanks.
Fantastic. So thank you for the questions. And I think you would be pleased to know that those guardrails are already being erected. We have the EU AI Act, much conversation around the EU AI Act. The EU AI Act actually puts different levels of risk. As I said, facial recognition, anything that deals with hiring, that deals with people's lives, that deals with people's opportunities, these kinds of technologies have been deemed high risk. It also looks at ways in which the technology needs to deploy, how we need to bring accountability and transparency and explainability to the ways in which we're doing the technology, the importance of ethics. So from the Hiroshima Accord to the EU AI Act to President Biden's executive order, there is much that's happening when it comes to erecting those robust and rigorous guardrails that are required. The big tech company, I think we all know the 5 companies that own everything. I think you can pretty much guess that. Could they regulate themselves? Well, we saw that this week with OpenAI. We saw the challenges with ethics and innovation, the challenges with trust and openness, and are we communicating the risks of these technologies? So we have a technology like ChatGPT that can do brilliant things. Everybody's using it. You know, you can write your sermon, you can come up with a plan, you can create an ethical framework. My students are also using it, I know, to write some of their papers. But the thing about this technology, it can also do an extraordinary amount of harm. I'll give you a perfect example. The attorneys general of the United States of America, all of them, sent a letter to the president saying this technology is doing things in the child protection, online child protection space that we did not imagine, because it now has the ability to create child sexual abuse material that we had never seen. About 2 weeks ago, I was on Fox TV in New York speaking about that, because what happened at a New Jersey high school is that some male students felt it was fun to actually create some deep fake pornography of their female students. So what they did is they used the faces of the female students and they put the bodies of porn stars. They deployed this among the school population. When I spoke about data trauma, deep fake porn is also a form of data trauma. The challenge is this: because it was the individual's face and not the individual's body, their privacy was really not undermined. And that's a loophole in privacy legislation. So now you have all these young women who are traumatized, who are ashamed, who are embarrassed. One dad said when he saw it, he thought it was his daughter. There was nothing that said this was a deep fake. There was no watermark that said this was not the individual. So when you think about the kind of trauma that young women are facing at the moment because of generative AI, which is good. People are using DALL-E, people are using Midjourney. People want to make themselves more beautiful, more handsome, more fit. They want to do all these great things with this technology, and it can do that. But you've got to bring that ethical vigilance. You've got to bring that understanding. So to put you at ease, internationally, much is happening in the space of ethics and responsible AI and trustworthy AI. And I mean, when I leave here, I'm on my way to Doha to talk about cognitive cities and ways in which we can bring cultural intelligence to the ways in which we're designing our cities and deploying this technology. So really, it's happening. Whether or not it's being distilled into Trinidad and Tobago is a challenge that we have. Unfortunately, we are still considered the global south. It's a term that I do not like, so I use, we're an emerging tech market. But these are things we have got to discuss really at a national level. So when I speak about upskilling our society when it comes to data, this is a conversation we need to have. While we understand the great things that data can do, we understand those risks, those historic data sets. If we are using models like risk assessment tools in our criminal justice system, in our judicial system, whose data is that? Is that our data? Are we making decisions? Or is that data that's coming out of the US? That traumatized data? So what I'm saying is that, yes, it's happening. And that's why I spend all my time discussing big data ethics and traveling and teaching data scientists at the University of Virginia. It's happening. Is it happening fast enough? No, it could never happen fast enough. The technology is always ahead of the law. There is no way at this stage to put the toothpaste back into the tube. But what we've got to do is that our emerging markets like Trinidad and Tobago, we have got to move faster when it comes to the ways in which the technology is being deployed.
I just want to add one thing to what you would have said and what Professor Cummings would have responded. From a geopolitical analysis, we understand how the buzz is out there in the international arena. And that is why she would have mentioned Trinidad and Tobago needs to open our eyes and recognize the speed and the advancement of maximizing technology, but policing technology is where I want to go. Are we then sitting as national security and recognizing there are issues in here that we will have to start investigating? There are certain types of behavior and attitudes and occurrences in cyberspace that do we have the technology, do we have the ability, do we have that sort of upskilled individuals now? Are we training our people? Is that being discussed at the academy, in the police academy? Is it something that we're looking at as a new unit in national security? Because that is the new space. And as technology advances, and you have to understand the criminal is also advancing, and we are dealing with a more sophisticated criminal in Trinidad and Tobago. Are we sophisticated enough as national security and as police officers to start investigating through the prosecutorial process to take that from an investigation to incarceration? And that's where I'm focusing my continued research.
If I may add to that, and a lot has been said about sophistication and upskilling, and I think it's an opportunity for us. We have so much young minds in the room next door. Not only are we being challenged to control predictive policing, but we are also being challenged as an opportunity for predictability as well, and ensuring that guardrails that we set up will work. And a big part of it is in how and where we upskill. So it's not just changing the curriculum to how we code or what we code, but being coded from a responsibility perspective. More than that, we need to make sure that at the young levels and even in the advanced levels, the education or the training that we give is around algorithms, the models of algorithms as well, right? And also a big part of that is how are algorithms being used, the transparency around algorithms, explainable AI, interpretive AI. A lot of it, people are saying, well, we don't have the skills resident in Trinidad, or we don't have a resident Caribbean. It will require research, it will require funding to support and bring that capability. But it is very important if we're going to, yes.
If I can just interject, because I know we're running over time, but I want to grab the opportunity to have the chairman of the Equal Opportunities Commission, who has a question, to just have his question answered, and then I will dismiss you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This question is for Professor. Thank you very much. I listened to you this morning, and that's why I'm here. And you mentioned a number of things, one of which was very important, was legal cynicism. I would like you just to share that with this audience, if you may,
sure,
or if you can. But the question I have is coming out from what you just said, and you anticipated probably what I was going to which is in terms of, AI moves much faster than legislation can move with it. Can we have a default position where the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the University of the United Nations now celebrating 75 years, can we use that as a default piece of legislation to be innovative in trying to meet the needs for AI as it engages into everyday's life, right? Can we use that as a default position in being innovative in finding the remedies where there's transgression of the various intrusions into everyday's life as such?
Sure. So thank you for that question, and thank you, of course, for coming after listening to the interview. Of course we can use it, but is the big tech using it? They're not using it. So it really outlines all the principles and all the sectors that we need to focus on, from the ways in which we live to our education system to the ways in which we are to react and interact with each other. But the challenge is it's really not enough. And that's why we're seeing that with that, you had in November last year, the the White House deploying what is considered a blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights. What we're realizing is that there are greater challenges to data and algorithms and AI that we had ever imagined. And the challenge is this: many of the data scientists, many of the computer scientists, many of the technical minds who are designing this technology are realizing that the technology is doing things they had never imagined. For us to come up with this concept of AI hallucinations with ChatGPT, because it gives you something that looks factual, but it is indeed inaccurate. We have had cases where ChatGPT has given information like suicide hotline information to young people that looks like a perfect 1-800 number, but it was a bomb bogus number. And you had someone at that time who needed an intervention for suicide. We have had so many challenges with the technology. It is toxic, it is harmful. So yes, the UN's Declaration of Human Rights is a great framework, but it's not enough. That's why the EU has an act. That's why the US has now an executive order. That's why we have the Hiroshima Accord. On the concept of legal cynicism, which is the one that you want to discuss, which is strictly criminal justice, what legal cynicism says is that when a country, a government, a judicial system is not deploying judicial interventions in real time, where people have lost trust and confidence in their judicial system, in their police system, the people eventually take the law into their own hands. So legal cynicism is linked to high homicide. So when you have high homicide in a society or in a community, it is because that community believes there is no which way that the government or the law enforcement agencies are going to give the justice that is required. Legal cynicism also develops when you have high homicide and low detection, and you are not solving crimes. When you do not solve crimes, it does not just mean it's a statistic. It means that there are families in extraordinary trauma because there is no closure. And that is what the justice system is supposed to do. It is supposed to bring not only punishment and retribution and rehabilitation and reintegration and reparation and all those great things. It's supposed to bring peace and closure. And in Trinidad and Tobago, given our high homicide rate, given our extraordinarily low detection rate, given the fact that communities do not feel confident and safe and believe they can trust the police, and because many of the strategies are seen as not legitimate strategies, legal cynicism is something that is very, very real. It results in retribution. It results in people taking crime into their own hands.
Street justice.
It results to vigilante behavior, street justice, and it really is unfortunate. But it really speaks to trust and confidence in your government and in your judicial system to protect you and to make you feel safe. And if we're talking about citizen safety and citizen security, we have got to explore that. And it means that when people think about the legal system, they think about it in a very cynical way, which is like,
Correct.
Is the police going to come and save us?
Or do we have to save
And with that, I think we have to end this session, and regrettably,
Oh.
I want you to express your thanks to this panel. Yeah? I think even beyond an hour, this is now the start of a conversation more than a conversation, all right? So thank you, panelists. You can excuse yourselves from the table, from the podium. Thank you so much for all your insights, and I think this was the high point of the forum thus far. Yeah. I want to also acknowledge just briefly that we've opened the partitions, and now we have about 100 students from schools all around the country joining us. Where is Mr. Ramratan from the Caribbean Development Bank? Where's Mr. Ramratan? Is Mr. Ramratan here? The reason Mr. Ramratan is not here is probably off celebrating because Presentation College Shaguanas won the competition across there. Congratulations, Presentation College. And congratulations to everybody who participated. You are the future of this initiative. So we go on to the next session, which is about artificial intelligence, big data, a smarter future, building capacities, specifically with women in data science. Leading the session, moderating the session, would be my own colleague, Fane Richards, who is the Communications and Advocacy Officer in the UN Resident Coordinator